To order the planning board. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Member Secca? Here. Vice Chair DeAmpert?
Here.
Member Hubbard?
Here.
Member Consall? Here. Chair Premer?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a number one for the approval of the agenda.
Second. Vice Chair DeAmpert?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Consall?
Yes.
Member Secca?
Yes.
Chair Premer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Now we'll open it up to audience comments for anything not pertaining to anything that's on the agenda.
I have Deborah Schechner. Teresa Shefstad.
This is in regards to the application, so yes or no?
Can I
That'll be,
ask a quick question a second? I think we missed that there wasn't a number next to it, but the action item for approval. Oh, I'm sorry, forget it. Ignore me.
okay,
We're
sorry.
good. Ignore me.
No, the audience,
Having a blonde moment, okay?
the initial audience comments are for something that's not on the agenda. So the audience comments for what we discuss on the agenda will be at the conclusion of the presentation of the items on the agenda. Okay, so I guess there's,
And Joe Genio, is that for an agenda item? Okay.
Okay.
oh yes, before we continue, I'd also like to introduce our newly appointed member of the planning board, Susan Council. Very good. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate your
Welcome.
stepping up and helping out the city of St. Pete Beach and, of course, the planning board. At this time, we will adjourn as the planning board and reconvene as the planning agency. Okay, now action items. We have two action items to talk about. First, of course, the most important is the conditional use permit, number 23033.
Madam Clerk, can you read the title?
I can. Resolution 2023-27, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, approving a conditional use permit pursuant to sections 35.3B1 and 35.4B of the Land Development Code to allow the construction of a 4-phase temporary lodging redevelopment that will include 1,596 total temporary lodging units, or 63.18 units per buildable acre, of which 629 units are additional above existing, 59,895 square feet of meeting space, of which 14,303 square feet is additional above existing, 79,126 square feet of retail and restaurant space, of which 42,964 square feet is additional above existing, and 31,105 square feet of office space, of which 10,486 square feet is additional above existing, and develop new lodging, accessory, and amenity structures containing the aforementioned units, accessory spaces, and amenities, as well as outdoor amenities and parking garages that will extend up to 116 feet in height above base level elevation, BFE, to the roof line, and 128 feet above BFE when including rooftop amenities or decorative features, and permit 2 rooftop dining and drinking amenities that includes the playing of outdoor music to parcels 0632 160000 230 0300 063216000000 230-0200 0132150000 110 0600 10132150000 110 0610 013215 18142 013215 18142 00001 013215 0000 1100500 and 0132150000 1100400 with addresses of 5600, 5700, 5750, 5800, 5900, and 6000 Gulf Boulevard, incorporating the conditions outlined herein and providing for correction of scrivener's error and an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So if I may, Chair Primer,
Please.
I believe the applicant's attorney is here. They have requested a continuance on this item and item 3B as well, which we will do separately. The reason we had to have this hearing is because advertisements went out, mailings went out, notices were published, signs were posted for today's date. So the idea is to open the meeting, which is what we've done, continue it to a date certain, confirm that all the members are available at that time and date, and then make a motion to continue it to preserve the advertisement. So if Ms. Batzel wants to come up and, for the record, make the request.
Hi, Elise Batzel, Stearns Wheeler Miller, for the record. We are requesting a continuance. We are still working through the development agreement issues with the city and the city attorney, which is why we're not in a position to move forward yet, because those two items need to run at the same time. And so we would request a continuance to a date certain of March 18th. And I think we said, Matt, 2:30 was, the folks were available at 2:30.
The only one we
If that
haven't
works
confirmed
for
with is 2:30. Correct.
So
Okay.
if that works for everyone, that would be the request. Thank you. And I'm available to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion on this, or?
You would make a motion, and I do see members of the public, so we can handle this a few ways. Number one, once it's continued, just to keep the record clear, I personally would prefer, if you're going to speak on this item about the project or anything related to it, since the board will not be getting into that today, that you wait until March 18th. I think it's appropriate, just for the record, to be clear. Plus, that's when the board will be deliberating and making a decision on what's in front of them. If you're not available March 18th and you want to make a public comment after the motion specific to the continuance request, that is fine. And then it's really up to the board if you want to hear public comment. What we're going to run into, though, is we're going to have people speaking today, which are technically part of the record, and then you're going to have the same people showing up on March 18th speaking again, probably making the same objections. So if you can wait till March 18th, please do so. If you're unavailable for some date and you'd like to make your objections here, it's really a board decision. So once we make the motion to continue to a date certain, we will open it up to public comment with the disclaimer I just put out there, and we can take it from there.
So with this continuation, we are not hearing anything today from our staff? Or
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing. You are not hearing any presentations from staff, developer, nothing from the city attorney. It is just a motion to continue to a date certain, strictly because the mailings went out. Had that not occurred, we would have not had this meeting. But because those notices said March 4th, we have to open it and continue it to a date certain to preserve the due process requirements.
Okay.
So the motion ultimately is,
To continue it to March 18th at 2:30.
okay,
Item 3A.
I'll make the motion, and plus,
Yes, sure.
okay, I'll make the motion to approve changing, or continuing the meeting until March 18th at 2:30.
Second.
If we could, I would prefer the resolution number. So I move to continue resolution 2023-27.
I move to continue resolution 2023-27 to March 18th at 2:30.
Second.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Consol?
Yes.
Member Secca?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dampert?
Yes.
Chair Premer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Now, as for public comment, before we go on to 3B, Madam Clerk, if you want to, again, I would prefer if you can hold off for the record's sake that you do so, but I do see people here, and I'm not going to prevent them from speaking if the board wishes to hear from them. But again, we're not getting into substantive issues today, so.
Call the names. Deborah Schechner? Excuse me. Teresa Shefstad? Joe Genio? John Kurzman? Oh, Teresa? Are you coming up? Teresa's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Shefstad, Passagrille. Good morning. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank you for your time and for staff's time. It's stunning the amount of paperwork you have to review to make a recommendation on an application. I would like to abbreviate some concerns that will hopefully bring you some assistance to your process. In applications, the city's analysis does not appear to have a financial reconciliation, only a presentation of the cost and purported offsetting benefits. Please consider requesting that staff complete a reconciliation to include through the entire life of the project. While you cannot exchange with me at the moment, at some point, could you please explain to the community whose role it is to educate and counsel planning members and commissioners as to your legal standing when making recommendations or decisions? The education and the counseling appears to only be directed at the applicants and to their benefit. Who is representing you? You should understand the legal authority and power you have to make decisions that shield you from applicant threats and intimidation. For instance, quotes made to the Times regarding the Serrata application by 2 commissioners indicated they did not understand Section 4.1. Here is one commissioner's quote: "We can't compel them to do the project we wish they might do. They have the right to do this with their property, what is allowed." That is not true. Section 4.1 clearly says certain uses are conditional rather than use by right. The article continued that she was inclined to follow the expertise of the planning board and staff. Planning members, pursuant to Section 22-247, you have the responsibility and duty to conform with the principles of the comp plan. The commissioners are relying on you, yet the principle of conditional use allowing when there are only minimal impacts was not honored. It is difficult to understand how negotiations were entered into when the applicant's request wasn't even reduced to 0. Negotiations start at the end of each spectrum. The city's negotiations should have started at 0 since the applicant's request uses were conditional, not rights. But here's maybe why. I don't know if you have this. Sorry, this is a bad scribble job. This is a page from the analysis that is perhaps unintentionally misleading. This section is titled General Development Requirements. Rather, conditional use request is what you're seeing. To help in your review, there should be a first column that shows land uses allowed, which would help you to see readily only 30 units per acre. Yet you are being given the presentation 75 is allowed. And now at the max of your negotiating ceiling, the next column should be identified as conditional use. There needs to be an updated analysis to include how your recommendations of the Serrata application will impact our town before you can make a fair recommendations on the trade winds. Please stay focused on Section 4.1. Review of the conditional use permit applications gives you, quote, the opportunity to deny the use of its if concerns cannot be resolved. Please ensure this application is negotiated and resolved so that your recommendations can be a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, before we get to the next one, if you have public comment on the continuance, you may speak today. If you have public comment on the substantive issues, please wait until March 18th.
I do not know if I'll be available March 18th. I'm here today.
The record, respectfully, the applicant doesn't have the ability to cross-witness. I mean, we're not hearing the item today. Everything is continued.
I have input for this commission or committee, agency.
Planning board.
I'm sorry?
Planning board.
They renamed themselves today, right?
The local, they didn't rename themselves, they're one and the same.
Okay. I have input for them, and a lot of it is general.
Okay, so if you can't be here on March 18th, we'll make a note. If you want to speak on March 18th, now will be your time.
Well, no, because I may be available, and I will try to skip over the slides I have today.
Mr. Kirschman, come on.
I will try to, without having time to prepare, I will try to skip over the ones that are focused specifically on this property, but some of them are very variable, very general about the role of these conditional use applications. In fact, my very first slide is very focused on that, and I'll try to skip over the things that are specific to the property, but then you're, in fact...
Are you starting your comments now?
I'm sorry?
Are you starting your comments now?
No, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand whether I'm going to have to skip over anything that's specific to the trade winds and then to be denied my ability.
I think Matthew was pretty clear. If you'd like to speak today, that is your prerogative.
No, so I'm going to
start the
speak
time.
generally and try to skip over things specifically, because some of these things I've even spoken about at city commission meetings in general, and I think it's important I get to express them. I'm John Kurzman from Bahia Underway South. I'm not speaking in regards to beach stewardship. The variances are, you do variances all the time, and zoning variances are actually much more severe. And 4.1 tells us that they are very much more severe, and gives us, and explains that property rights, for instance, for the large resort districts are really only 30 units per acre and 50 feet. And anything beyond that is much higher than that. I can't skip slides. I won't show you the before and after slide. The defectiveness of a large resort district is that in consideration of the larger size and depth of the parcels that are adjacent to the Gulf beaches, they created a large resort district. And I discussed with the City Commission that the comprehensive plan covers multiple lots. And then when the comprehensive plan was done, there were specific lots on the map in the comprehensive plan. Those are separate lots. And all the rules in the comprehensive plan refer to the rules of the comprehensive plan, which means even if someone combines lots later, it wouldn't mean, for instance, that you could say, well, I've combined 5 lots, or I've combined every lot in the whole large resort district, and now we'll only need to provide 1 beach access. Every lot that is disturbed by more than 3 acres needs to create its own beach access. And that's the rules that you need to live by as you move forward. And you always need to remember Section 35 calls for Section 39. It says no walls. But it says size and depth of parcels that are adjacent to the Gulf beaches. Remember, the word is are. Remember those guiding lights that we were told at the last hearing? It's not just what's in the comprehensive plan, it's what's not in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan doesn't say, oh, and if you combine lots, let's treat them as one. It's not in the comprehensive plan. And consider that when you're looking at traffic, and consider that when you're looking at conditional use, our comprehensive plan says, you go to our website, the conditional use is for 1 year. You must do it in 1 year. If you start doing things for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years, well, then you're denying other properties down the street in the large resort district their ability to expand. Would that be fair? And then they're going to sue you and say, well, we were deprived. And then we'll have said yes to one property, not to another. So we have to be careful. We can't be doing things ahead. And so then traffic studies have to be consistent. So if Plaza Beach tells you that they have 2 to 3 cars for every guest, you need to be consistent and have your traffic studies consistent with every other hotel. And those are my general comments. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any other cards?
Any other comment?
Okay.
Before we move on from this item, can I address the applicant's counsel?
You can, but we've already motioned and approved the continuance.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
this is more
Yeah.
informational. Hello. I was just wanted to ask, prior to the March 18th hearing, would it be possible to have renderings of garages and just the Gulf Boulevard view entered?
I'm sorry, renderings of the garages, and
The view from Gulf Boulevard, like at ground level.
we're working on ground level. We do have a little bit up already, that rendering in the package. And the problem is if you go ground level, it's so wide, you can't see any detail. We can provide it, but you're not going to be able to see anything. So we've taken like sections so you can see it, and we have one from above. So yes, let's see, let me just make a note.
Is it possible you can do one for each of the 5 addresses?
Some of the,
This is 5 addresses made into one. If we could get a street view of each of those, that would be very helpful for us.
Or the phases, not necessarily the specific street address,
Yeah.
but
one of the difficulties, I think, in doing that over this project, because it's phased, is that, for example, like the landscape plan and engineering is not done for phases 2 through 4. So they're not going to be accurate like phase 1, because once you engineer the site, things change. For example, the landscaping that we would be showing would be at 50%, right, Florida vegetation, because that's what staff has asked. If this board were to come back and ask for something different, it wouldn't necessarily look like that. So we will get you the best that we can. It's just that we're going to, the true engineering isn't done at this point in time. And so that view from the street, when we pull out, isn't going to be, I think, as accurate as you are looking for.
okay.
But we will, there are some renderings that have been submitted. We will send to Matt and to Brandon additional renderings that you may not have seen, so that you have as many renderings. They take weeks and weeks and weeks to produce. And I know that we're working on some additional ones for the hearing, so we'll go ahead and try to send those out early rather than waiting for the hearing.
Okay. The other question I had was, page 495 of the current iteration of the packet has a full rendering of the property from above, so 20,000-foot view with a key that tells you these buildings are hotels.
Right, like the conceptual site plan?
Yeah, I was just hoping. So some of the diagrams, like the.
Could I look at what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Mr. Primer, if I come up?
Chair Primer, she's asking if she can approach.
Yes, please.
It's just that generic.
Oh, yes, the conceptual site plan.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry. What about that one?
So this diagram has quite a bit of useful information, but it's so small in the PDF you can't blow it up or it just becomes unreadable. So I was hoping maybe a higher resolution version of that, or in a PDF format so I could zoom in on it.
Yeah, in fact, we will, with your approval, Matt, I guess, we can drop off this week the larger format that are clear of the phasing plan and the conceptual site plan. I didn't realize that's what your packet looked like.
Oh, yeah.
What we submit are like the full renderings. So we'll be happy to submit those, and then Brandon can get them to each of you.
Okay.
That'd be really helpful. I didn't realize you didn't have large copies.
Yeah, and on a similar note, so there's diagrams that are of fire access, sewer connections.
All those large.
Those have useful features in that they define what some of the buildings are versus the other diagrams that just show existing building but doesn't really tell the story of this is a hotel building, this is a restaurant.
Yes.
I was hoping for maybe a combined version, so something like this exact document, but naming the buildings so I know what each one is, so I can look at it from above and say, okay, here's where the hotel buildings are, here's where the restaurants are.
So instead of Tower 1, this is hotel with this much amenity space, restaurant.
Can we
Okay.
show that overhead so people know what we're referring to?
Yes.
I just want to make a couple notes just so I don't forget. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank
So
you.
now,
Give it to the clerk.
I think we're moving on to item 3B.
We have,
I just want to make a quick question.
Sir, real quick,
Can we,
can you state your name and address for the record and provide the clerk with a comment card?
Sure. Can we submit our
comments before the next
Your name and address, please.
in writing.
Your name and address.
Aidan Guc, AYDIN-GUC.
Okay.
I want to submit my comments in writing
Okay.
for the next meeting.
That is very doable, and we can work with you offline. I believe there's an email that you can send it to.
I'll give it to my,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So, and 3B, isn't that what we just discussed? The continuance?
That was 3A, yes. 3B will be continued as well. So, like Ms. Batso alluded to, there's a development agreement which requires 2 public hearings. The statute in our code allows one of those public hearings to be in front of the local planning agency. We are still working through that agreement, which was the purpose of the continuance today. So this item will also be continued to 318 at 2:30.
Correct.
Do we need
So-
to do a second motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I would prefer a second motion.
Okay. You ready for a motion?
Yeah.
Sure.
I make a motion to continue Resolution 2023-27 to March 18th at 2:30.
So for that one, it would be item 3B, the development agreement. So it's on the back page of the agenda.
Yes, where's the number on it, though?
It doesn't have a number.
Oh, it doesn't have a number,
No.
sorry. I saw the one,
No
and
worries.
I grabbed that, sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so just for the continuance for the development agreement?
Correct.
Okay. Make a motion to continue the development agreement to March 18th at 2:30.
Second.
Member Conzel?
Yes.
Member Secca?
Yes.
Vice Chair DeAmpert?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Chair Premer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion items?
Do we need to adjourn as the local planning agency?
At this point, unless there's any discussion items that you'd like to discuss as an LPA. Seeing none, then you can reconvene as the planning
We
board.
can adjourn as the planning agency.
Mhm.
So now we're back to the little planning board.
Correct. Anything else you'd like to discuss? Again, welcome the new member.
We've got 2 items.
We appreciate your support, and I guess staff has some added things.
Yeah. So 2 things that we wanted to kind of get your guidance on. Back in December, we passed an ordinance related to our boat ramp, changing the hours to it, but also to come up with a type of permit for commercial use out of our boat ramp. So that passed by resolution or ordinance.
The boat ramp hours? Ordinance.
So the staff, we weren't involved in that process of the ordinance. Once it got approved, we have to come up with a permit to be able to permit this. So what we came up with, and I think Brandon gave you a copy and was on your desk, is using a right-of-way authorization permit. So what we need is, one, this is the type of permit we're looking at doing, but what we don't have in our ordinance is a fee that's associated with this. So we kind of want your guidance on what you feel is fair and appropriate for, let's say, a seawall company that uses our boat ramp to do work, or a commercial fisherman, a kayak company. There's a lot of commercial business. By getting this permit, we would, one, have them on file with us that they are doing this. They provide insurance to us, and they submit an annual fee similar to our business tax that we charge each year. So, Brandon, do you have anything more to add?
Do we have any similar fees from local cities, local places?
We have a similar fee in our code of ordinances, which is the closest we have is for a water taxi registration. It's annual and it's $100. I think that was the number we were discussing. It's a similar amount of staff time in processing these applications. That seemed
Correct.
in the right range for us.
Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, do they have any such?
I don't think they charge for commercial use out of their boat ramp.
Okay.
So it's new to us and around this area. So we just went to what we have that's similar, like you said, the water taxi. And similar how we do our water sports. When they submit for their BTR, they pay per watercraft. but that would be very hard for us. We can go out on the beach, and let's say they had, on their BTR, 7 jet skis, we can go out and count that. Typically, when the boat ramp's being used, we don't know how many vehicles or boats that contractors has or use, or if they're going to use it. So we didn't really want to go per vehicle, but again, that's for what we'd kind of want to,
Is this a one-time fee or
each year, annual.
annual? Okay.
I do have a question, just to confirm. This is a recommendation that will most likely be in ordinance format for Schedule A as approved by the commission? Okay, just for the public to understand, you will have an opportunity to speak on this prior to adoption.
Was there any consideration for the types of usage, for instance, seawall or, which is sort of limited one time in and out, as opposed to if you had somebody renting jet skis from a boat ramp or kayaks or something like that was actually operating their business from that location? Is there any difference in have you considered any differences in the fee structure? Because it seems to me one was more intrusive than the other.
There was some thought process, because obviously there are some commercial uses that use them every day, and then there's some that when they're needing, like a seawall, to when they're doing work in the area. Some are small family businesses, and some are very large businesses. So a deeper fee would cut into, like, let's say a commercial fisherman that has a small operation and goes out to get fish that he sells to one of the local restaurants, as opposed to some of the large contractors that are out there. So the type of business is varied, so you don't, I think all that could be considered. So if you wanted to look at a tiered thing, that's something that we can.
That sounds much more fair.
Well, and the thought process was, if you're a marine contractor and you're using our boat ramp to deliver supplies for a dock on the city, that's through a right-of-way permit, which we already do. The idea for this ordinance was specific because there were issues that the public were dealing with a commercial rental business utilizing our dock for commercial purposes, which is what this permit would be utilized for. Right, so if you're using our dock to get equipment to a job site, that's obviously different than, hey, come rent this jet ski and I'm going to dock it right here for you.
Right.
So it's already distinguished is what I'm trying to get at when it comes to those two separate situations.
And that is not covered by this type of permit?
No, this permit is for commercial use, right? So I'm running a business and I need to rent something, and I'm going to go ahead and let you enter the water at a boat ramp.
So we would effectively, if you will, I mean, and this is a little bit of stretch from that, lease out a place of business for $100 a year?
No. No, this would strictly be, I'm paying $100 to use this boat ramp to allow my clients to enter the water. Because remember, most of our jet skis are behind the resorts.
Right.
Right,
Well,
so.
all right, let's talk about kayaks then, or something like that. If you have your kayak trailer there, you park your kayak trailer there, they come and they rent it, they put their kayak in, they bring it back. You're effectively running your business from that location.
But in order to run a business in the city, you need a business tax receipt,
Well, yeah.
right, which has a principal place of business, which would not be city property. Right, so their principal location of business could not be the boat ramp.
I was thinking more about.
Yeah, he's just saying they monopolize the time at the boat ramp every morning when they're loading 18 kayaks.
That, yes, but this is a lot more control because we can look in our system and say, okay, these are who have permits, this is who we're getting the complaints about. Maybe we set some parameters the next year on their BTR. But really, it was the hours of operation, right? There were people using it way past 10 and 11 o'clock, disturbing neighbors, a lot of noise, so, things of that nature.
This gives us control. I think we discussed it when we was doing the beach ordinance, and then we were looking at the boat ramps for the waterways ordinance. This just kind of skipped up, and we got it done to limit close the time of the boat ramp at 10 o'clock, which mirrors our noise ordinance. And we can come back to you. We were planning on doing this March 18th, but clearly we're not doing that on March 18th. So we thought we had a little more time to put something together, but since we had the ordinance passed in December, wanted you guys to get ahead of it, kind of get a sense. I'm sensing a tiered model
Yes.
is something you'd like to see. We can come back with specifics. We just wanted to start that discussion so we could do this in April. There's nothing going on, right? So, okay. And then one other item we wanted to quickly discuss, and again, we were planning on doing this in a couple weeks, but through this process that we've been going through with our conditional use permits, we find what we initially get from the application is very minimal. So it's a lot of chasing after for certain things, even some of recent CUPs, like we still need this item, we still need an updated site plan, we still need this. So I think Brandon has a couple slides, but the conditional use application, again, what's required just to turn it in is not a lot. And so while we're reviewing it, we are chasing a lot of times, which then you're waiting, you schedule a time when something's going to be heard and there's still items that we didn't. So I think Brandon's got a couple suggestions that we're looking at that just we get the complete package from the beginning. And yes, we're going to probably change things and look for other things as review, but there's a lot of back and forth that I think is not productive for staff's time.
Yeah, if we could pull up the slides. And this is only for projects moving forward. This isn't related to anything that's currently in the office, but currently, I'll go through it on the next slide. The city has very limited requirements for conditional use permit submittals. The planning board sees only among the most significant developments. Those are hotels that are over 50 feet in height or 30 units per acre within the community redevelopment district. Staff would like to have, just as a policy, an expanded minimum submittals list to applicants to ensure that plans are ready for technical review committee and planning board when they're submitted, instead of collecting those documents in the back end. We're not going to get everything initially for every project. There are going to be certain elements of projects, especially very large developments, that we're probably going to have to work through a TRC or even possibly planning board. But just an initial submittal list is what we're hoping to come up with. That's more involved than what we currently have in the code. So currently we require a completed application, proof of ownership, agent authorization, a survey. It needs to be current, it needs to be less than 10 years old, and we need a scaled site plan. You know, compared to what you're seeing in your packets, 500-600 pages, this is obviously very minimal. We ask for a lot more at the start, and for bigger projects, we tend to get more than this, but this is what's required at a minimal submittal through our code. It's only really 2 substantial documents that are produced by the applicant, plus the applications and supporting documents. So these are items that, for the developments that we've seen recently, that we've either required at the start or have required as time's gone on, either through the technical review committee or planning board. The first is a zoning matrix. You tend to see these on the site plans. These are the breakdown of all of the standards in the city's code and how the project either complies or doesn't comply with that. Impervious surface ratio, the floor area of the building, the parking requirements, and so on. Those would all be items that are shared in the zoning matrix. We would like to get elevations of all sides of the structure in color. A lot of times you see the renderings of the project. Other times it's just a flat elevation, an architectural elevation. We would like to, ensure that the planning board can see what the elevations of the project will look like. A landscaping plan, again, the conditional use permit is the first step in the process. From there, it goes to site plan, it goes to building permit if the project's approved. So there may not be exact vegetation layout, but we would like to at least get a vegetation schedule, what kind of plants are going to be planted, get a general buffer design, what is the width going to be, where are the beach access and things like that going to be in cases where they're required. Transportation study methodology, the city only requires transportation studies when the project is expected to generate more than 51 peak hour trips. Most large hotel projects will pass that threshold. So in the case that they will, we would like to make sure that that's supplied at an early stage. And then a draft transportation management plan, I think it says down at the bottom there. These are the additional items that all projects need to submit. There needs to be some kind of transportation impact mitigation. With smaller project, these can be things like impact fees. I believe when Serrata came forward, he saw items like the circulator contributions and so on. Those are all part of what the city requires through its transportation management plan, and it scales based on the size of the project. So these are things that we would like to see specifically for projects of a size that would come to the planning board. We're still working through the details in smaller projects. Conditional use permits run the gamut from 3-unit docks, multifamily docks, all the way up to very large hotel projects. So we need to come up with something for the smaller projects in particular. But for the planning board, and we received some feedback today on labeling of buildings, what are the uses within each buildings and multi-building developments. But is there anything else that you would like to see that was included with either prior submittals that wasn't included with those projects that you would like to see moving forward to make sure that we have those available for you when it gets to planning board?
I'd like to see more specifics on the traffic studies.
Okay.
We hear that more than anything else from the public, is that, all right, Tradewind's going to do this organic expansion, and they're saying it's only a 2% transportation impact?
Please don't mention specific projects.
Okay, I'm sorry. For any project. The methodology used for the traffic study. And if there's a standard such study, if there's a standard by which everything else is judged.
So that would be some kind of confirmation that the methodology being used is standardized across the industry or with other projects. That's what you're looking for? Okay.
And to go with that transportation also, if we can have something that says, when you have a limited number of hotel rooms, so that we and the public can see it, understand the impact that those rooms are realistically going to place on the roadways, specifically if there's 200 additional units, and the hotel has got a typical occupancy of 75%, and of those 200 rooms, there's only, we're not going to have 200 cars, and all 200 cars are not going to leave and come back and be on the street at the same time. So if those kind of basic soup to nuts kind of discussions, because when we get into peak hours and all that stuff, that's great, except those particular units, what are those particular units going to, what's our estimation what those particular units are going to add to our streets? Because we have so many other things loading our streets, and the biggest ones obviously is Pinellas County.
Okay. So you would be looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would be looking at possibly more than just the peak hour, and you would also be looking at based on occupancy. You would want estimates based on that, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you have a hotel, you don't occupy it 100% of the time.
Okay.
And so have them give you their expectations based on, obviously they're going to have an existing hotel. This is kind of the what we see based on our loading in our parking garages now. They can make some very good estimates on what are those 200 rooms, those 500 rooms going to mean on our streets, period.
You're saying, just to clarify, are you saying more so like if it's got 500 right now and it goes to 700, that's where that 200 is coming from that you want them to focus on? It's just that 200 only?
Yeah, just that 200, because the other 500 are already here.
Right.
And a lot of times the studies do account for things like that, but I think we could probably make it more clear and have our consultant, present what they did in reviewing that.
I think that'd be good for us, but I also think it'd be good for the citizens to understand what sounds like a huge number at the end of the day is X instead of Y.
So the overall project, but then the specific increase is what you'd be looking at. Okay. And then from earlier, especially for more complex projects, it sounds like an overhead rendering or some kind of rendering that gives you an idea of where the
Street
the
level.
uses on the site are.
Right.
And street level.
Street level, yeah.
And I think, obviously, I know that I don't mean to talk specific to that. I know there was the option given today as far as getting full-size renderings, for us to be able to see them. That would be helpful, I think, with any project, that's going to be a larger project, because otherwise, to the point of what Member Hubbard showed, I mean, that's pretty tiny for us to try and figure out exactly what it is, so.
Okay.
And I know it's an expense, but I think it's something that would be a worthwhile expense for us to have a better evaluation.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything
Yeah, we
else?
just
Thank you.
wanted to get a little more teeth in the application itself.
Absolutely.
Not change the process, but what we get in the beginning.
Very good.
Jen, if I may.
Yep.
Kristen Coleman, Senior Planner. I also just wanted to bring up, I know we were talking about kind of big picture items, whether it's transient housing, that kind of thing. But we do have other conditional uses. Some zones we have, like veterinarians are conditional uses. So kind of think outside the box, even car rental agencies, not just the big guys, but also the little, which you may want to see. And we'd be happy to provide you, we have a list of permitted and conditional uses, just it's broken down by use and broken down by zone. So you can kind of get a bird's eye view of, if you just roll down them, what's permitted where and what are conditional uses in certain zones.
Yeah.
That might be helpful too. Okay, we'll get that to you. Thank you.
So we'll prepare a new application for our meeting in April that you guys can review a little bit more, but we wanted to kind of get the ball rolling and get your thoughts for us. So thank you.
Okay.
I do
So,
have another public comment.
I'm sorry?
I have a public comment from Cynthia Perry. If you're ready, if not, hold on to it.
It's up to you. I don't know what it's on, but it's up to the board. If it's probably on something that was just discussed.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Cindy Perry. I live at 1126 Boca Ciega Isle Drive. And I've brought this up before, but I keep trying to make it clear. I'm a retired project management professional certified by the Project Management Institute. I would never be able to bring forth any of the projects that have been brought forth to you all without a complete financial analysis. That doesn't mean it doesn't have assumptions. It doesn't mean that there aren't estimates that are clearly documented. But I can't believe we go into these projects and we don't know the impact on the resident taxes. I do not want to subsidize the hotels. I've said that before. Just in general, there should be a process in the economic impact analysis that truly looks at the financials and doesn't have statements like, it'll likely do this or that. I could never get a project approved the way we approve projects here. So I'm willing to help if somebody needs some guidance on how to approach this, but the comprehensive plan says that businesses should be paying 30 to 40% of the tax burden. They're currently paying less than 20, and nobody seems to notice. And people look at the bed tax, and the bed tax doesn't come to the city. The residents are supplementing the businesses, and that needs to be thoroughly looked at. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have another comment, John Kurzman.
Be very brief. John Kurzman,
He already spoke.
Underway South, to the item just discussed.
John, you already spoke.
Oh, I thought it was just to the item just discussed. Okay. All right, thank you.
Oh, question?
Matthew, after hearing, and this really applies to our board and how we proceed, after listening to the comments that was made by our commission concerning lobbyists specifically, and the reporting of those, I would like some clarification on that. Specifically, the list of lobbyists now is getting long, quite long. And they talked about different individuals who are not necessarily registered lobbyists, but are lobbying for a thing. When lobbyists call us, I mean, it was brought up that there's a list of the lobbyists and you should have it in front of you. And I think one of the commissioners said, I keep it on my desk. Well, I don't have a desk anymore. And I don't carry those lists with me. So can we request or require the lobbyists to identify themselves if they call us and say, my name is XYZ, I'm a registered lobbyist with the city of St. Pete Beach, and I have discussions on X?
Absolutely. I mean, they should be doing that anyways, because there are other statutory prohibitions when it comes to lobbyists. Like, what if you meet for coffee? They're not supposed to buy you. I mean, there's other things that go into lobbyists. I will say, every year lobbyists have to renew. Right now, I believe we only have a handful, 5 or 6 registered lobbyists in the city. So we don't really have that many. I'll confirm.
A lot more than that, because we constantly are getting.
Do it every year.
Well, they have to do it every year.
But I mean, just this year, I mean.
Like,
Well, maybe they.
it seems like a lot, but ironically for the city, there's a lot of lobbyists that are representing multiple people for multiple projects. So it's the same set of lobbyists every time. But yes, they should be disclosing that, because they're the ones required to register. You're the ones required to disclose who you've spoken to. And even if you've spoken to no one, a simple, I haven't spoken to anyone with the clerk will suffice with the requirements of what we're asking for. Right? So if you don't speak to anyone, don't just ignore it. Just say, I've spoken to no one. And then it'll be a 0, right? You haven't spoken to anyone on this. But if anyone calls you about a specific project, and if you remember the presentation I gave on ethics and gifts, your first question should be, what does this person want? Right? Why are they calling me? And you feel free to ask them, are you a lobbyist? Have you registered with the city? Because it is a new ordinance. Most people don't even know about it. What we've done is we've included the lobbyist registration as part of any development application, variance, CUP, so on and so forth, to elude attorneys and consultants that they need to file that. But please, if I were you, I would be asking the same question.
Are persons of, I think the term was persons of interest, that have to do with a project or have neighbors around, people who have impact. How do we know, are we responsible for reporting? For instance, today we received through the clerk's office 3 or 4 letters from residents to us advocating a position on things that we're going to be reviewing. And we didn't do a ex parte at the beginning of this to say, would that be ex parte when it comes through the commission and it comes to us? That
is ex parte. So on March 18th, when we say, does anyone like to disclose any ex parte communications, you would say emails and letters from residents. Right, so the whole deal with ex parte is anything that you've received outside of the record, you need to disclose on the record.
It comes through City Hall. That's considered on the record, so we don't have ex parte.
It's not considered on the record. The record is begun when the matter begins.
Okay.
Right? The record is begun when the matter begins.
Yeah, okay.
So right now, in my opinion, the record hasn't started, which is why I suggested that if they had things to say, they should wait until the 18th. But the moment that is heard and staff presents and everyone goes through their presentations, that is the record.
Okay.
I'm still a little confused on that. I'll be
That's
honest.
fine.
So, like,
From the city.
if there's something that's sent to us from Jenny, then we still have to say, we got that? Is that what
Especially if you read it, yes.
Okay.
You should.
Okay.
Because you're taking in information outside of you sitting here.
Got it, okay.
Right? If that's easier to understand, right? Like if you're meeting as a board and you're taking in information, so is everyone else. So you don't have to disclose anything. But if you meet with a neighbor or a developer or an attorney or a group of neighbors and you get all these emails and you read them and all of a sudden you're starting to take in knowledge,
But that's still, I guess that's where like, when I'm hearing you describe it there, it sounds like it's more direct to personal versus coming from the city to
These
us.
were sent-
That's where that's where I'm confused
Yeah.
on, is if it's already coming through the city, isn't it already on record?
Well, it's public
Because we
record.
all
Public
received
record.
the same
Correct.
email.
But we don't make ex parte disclosures for you individually.
Okay.
But if I don't have any communication with anybody outside of what I get from the city, I still have to say.
You still received it,
Okay,
correct?
I still have to say, okay, the city sent me,
It's
Yes.
saying outside of public hearing, you weighed information that was presented, even though.
but it's all part of our public packet too.
Well, even though it was proxied through the city
That's
at,
a good point.
at the
That's,
hearing.
that's why I'm confused on it.
Yeah.
It's a good point. If it's part of the public packet, then it's technically not
Yeah, that's where
ex
I'm-
parte, so to speak. But to be safe, because remember, ex parte, the reason you're disclosing it is to cure it, right? You disclosing it is curing your ex parte communications. And remember, you're all sitting as quasi-judges, and as a judge, you wouldn't want one party to get access to you and the other party not be there. So in a precaution, I would just still simply say emails from residents, letters, because they're going to come in bulk beginning now, right? So I would just make that statement on March 18th.
We don't have to list the name, just I received.
You have to be able, you have to provide enough for the applicant to understand them, but if they're part of the record, it's simply just, because a lot of the emails are the same and repetitive and have the same exact template, right? So you don't need to read it verbatim, but you can just say emails from residents.
And
Through the city.
One more, and I don't know how, I don't need to, but obviously this was a big enough point that it took a lot of discussions at one of the,
Commission meetings.
earlier this year, I was approached, and I think our entire board was, about setting up a meeting. It was just scheduling, not anything about the stuff, just scheduling a meeting. Are those, when nothing's been discussed about it, is that ex parte communications also?
Did you attend a meeting?
The meeting was never held.
Then no.
I'm talking about just that phone call.
If it's just a coordinating, then no.
Okay, coordination.
Remember, it has to be information that you're receiving about this specific application. If they're just saying, hey, are you available on March 12th? I mean, that's not really about the specific application.
That's what I anticipated, but
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Sure.
Good questions.
Okay. In anticipation for March 18th, I'm looking at this incredible binder that David brought with. I attempted to get through all 700 pages prior to this meeting, not knowing where it's going to be continued, so we can be prepared for the 18th. And are we going over all 800 of these pages? Is it going to be a 4-hour meeting, 8-hour meeting, 10-hour meeting? Do we know?
No,
Okay,
we don't.
we don't. So it's possible.
I mean, there's a lot of variables there, right? Like, how long does staff need? How long does applicant need? How many people show up for public comment?
Sure.
Do we limit anything or do we not? I mean, because right now everyone gets 3 minutes. If there's 100 people, I mean, that's 300 minutes right there. It's roughly 5 hours.
Right.
So it's just hard to tell. But we're starting a little earlier so that we're not here until the AM hours,
Okay,
hopefully.
hopefully. Okay, very good.
Go back to David's telephone book there. Atlas or whatever. Anyways, I'm seeing, in looking at what I saw also, that there was a huge amount of tertiary information that's provided that doesn't seem to apply to the CUP and to those elements within the CUP that have to be addressed for variance. They're very specific in the land development code, and you know, I mean, so I guess I'm wondering, at what level are we supposed to be? You know, are we supposed to be experts on this for this to come in? Because we have staff, and we have the representations from the applicants and the representations from other professionals that are going to be in front of us. But
Plus
yeah.
city manager and city attorney.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, there's one that talks about transportation, and it's very specific in there about how that transportation works. And if you know, if it's presented and it's in here, this is how many parking spaces we need, this is how the traffic flow is gonna, you know, it's very specific in here. Does it have to go on to, you know, the variegation of the leaves on each plant?
So, are you required to be experts? No, right? Are you required to rely on expert testimony and layperson testimony as long as it's fact-based in making a decision if the criteria is met? Yes, right? You're making your decision based on competent substantial evidence, which is provided to you by the city's expert, the applicant experts, there may be public experts that they hire, and fact-based layperson testimony, right? But you all have had professions outside of probably planning and developing and things of that nature, so no one expects you to be an expert, although after the last meeting it seemed like a lot of the citizens in the city did, which I think is a tall ask. But you're here as a judge, right? You're making a decision based on evidence that you hear and criteria that you review. That's it.
Okay.
Good answer.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Keeping me on my toes today. Rapid fire.
Is there any other comments we need to get into the record?
I would like to make a general comment in response to Cindy Perry's statements, just to get on the soapbox for a second. It would be nice if Pinellas would give us back some of the bed tax money they collect. They, unfortunately, we don't probably matter enough with the number of votes our city represents to have them do that when they can spend it on other things, but
Amen.
that is the way it is.
Well, and I'd like to just double down on that. I mean, after the hurricane, we lost an entire dune system in Paso Grill. And guess what was used to rebuild it? Pinellas County bed tax money.
Yep.
And that was what, 12, I mean, I don't know, 6, maybe 8, $10 million.
Right.
So although we don't see it all the time, it did what we needed it to do, and we got the dunes restored rather quickly, I would say, by the county.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. Like, you may not get it and be able to spend it, but you do get the benefits of it in certain situations.
Thank you for that.
Red tide as well.
David, anything else? Oh, okay. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming. We'll see everybody, if not before, we'll see you on the 18th. Meeting is adjourned.
Nice.